Did Tentacle just make their Sync E timecode box obsolete? Well, they recently released a firmware update to their Track E audio recorder. Now, if you don't know what either of these boxes are, the Sync E is simply a timecode generator box that can be connected Bluetooth to other similar timecode boxes. The Track E is an audio recorder that records internally to a micro SD card, but it can communicate through Bluetooth timecode to then be synced up with other sync boxes, such as the Sync E timecode box. Now, what this firmware did for the Track E was give it the ability to send timecode information out of the headphone port. Now, on the box itself, it has a headphone output, and usually what that was used for beforehand was to simply monitor the audio or play back the files after they had been recorded. But Tentacle is now, through this firmware update, giving you the ability to select what you want to be coming out of this headphone port. There's a few different options. You can have just simple left and right audio, or you can have timecode come out of the left side and audio come out of the right side. Now, this is really awesome because the price difference between these two devices is really so minimal compared to the features that you get with the Track E. Now, in the most basic form, the differences are you're able to record 32-bit float internal audio on this device, whereas the Sync E, it is simply just a timecode generator box. So looking at B&H's website, they have a 2-pack of the Sync E timecode boxes for $399, basically $400. So if we look at that at a per unit cost, that's around $200. Now, a per unit cost of the Track E on B&H is $249. So you're looking at only a $50 difference between these two units. And for $50, you get internal 32-bit float recording. That's pretty awesome. Now, that is the price of the Track E without a lav microphone. Now, if you wanted to include a lav microphone, that's an extra $100, but I'm assuming you may be similar to me where if you are looking into timecode solutions, you probably already have a set of wireless mics with some lavs. So for me personally, I am going to purchase the Track E devices without a lav because I already own a few lav mics, and that's gonna save me $100. And that's where that $50 comparison comes into play. Now, once I heard about this firmware update, I was a little bit skeptical on if it would work on every device. So currently I have a Sony FX6, a Sony A7S III, and my external audio recorder is the Zoom F6. Now, it's a little bit confusing in my mind talking about the Sony FX6 and the Zoom F6. It's too similar of names. But those two devices in particular have dedicated timecode input to where it can record metadata timecode to the files. On the other hand, the Sony A7S III does not have metadata timecode. It can only use audio timecode, basically where it is recording the timecode sound to the audio track. And then for me, I work in DaVinci Resolve. It's an easy conversion. It's just a one click. We're able to convert audio timecode to metadata timecode. I know on other editing softwares, Premiere specifically, it does not have a feature to where you can, in the editor, convert audio timecode to metadata timecode, so you've got to use some other third-party apps. Tentacle has their own app that is free to download with a purchase of one of their devices. And in the Tentacle app, it can read metadata timecode and audio timecode and sync all of those for you. And then what you would do is export an EDL file or an XML file, basically a timeline, to import into Premiere or Final Cut. Because I was skeptical, I went ahead and tested the timecode out of the headphone jack of the Sync E. And I was pleasantly surprised to see that the Sony FX6 and the Zoom F6 automatically recognized it as timecode. My assumption is that there is no difference in the audio that is coming out of the Sync E or the Track E headphone port. One other difference between these two is that the Sync E actually has a scratch mic built into the box. So the left channel of audio is the timecode and the right channel is this scratch audio, which is great for cameras like the A7S III that don't have a dedicated timecode input, but you could still, say on the FX6, still have the scratch audio on the camera. Now, a way around this with the Track E, if you were to use this with the A7S III, is you still have the capability of plugging a microphone into the box. So what you can do in the app is have the timecode data coming down the left channel, and then plug a microphone into the microphone input, and you don't have to record the audio, but it will take the audio from that microphone and route it through the right channel of the output and into your camera. Simple way to do that is to just grab a tiny boom microphone that you would possibly already have on your camera for audio and plug that into here, and it's gonna route it to that right input of your camera. So yes, I do think that the Sync E is now obsolete with this new firmware to the Track E. But are there any use cases where you would still prefer to have the Sync E instead of the Track E? I'm not really sure. A couple of reasons that I could think of is maybe size. The size of the Sync E is definitely smaller than the Track E, a few centimeters though. It's really not that different. And the battery life on the Sync E is much greater than the Track E. I attribute that to there's a lot more processing going on in the Track E, even if you are not utilizing the 32-bit float recording, if you're just using it as a timecode generator box. From the most basic standpoint, the way that I personally will be using these are the majority of work that I have is a simple 2-camera setup for interviews, and then we capture B-roll to go along with those interviews. Now, I have an A camera, which is the Sony FX6, B camera, which is the Sony A7S III, and then an external audio recorder, which is the Zoom F6. So both cameras and the audio recorder will have a Track E device primarily just to generate timecode so that my post-production workflow can go a lot smoother. Now this also frees me up to have the ability for a few different configurations. If I need to use these 3 Track E devices as audio recorders for lav mics, I could use it in a few different situations. Say I didn't want to use the Zoom F6 with a boom mic, I could lav and use that one Track E to record audio and have the other 2 still on camera. Everything is still timecode synced. In an extreme example, if I need 3 lav mics, okay, I won't worry necessarily about timecode on the cameras. Now with the FX6, I could jam timecode because it has a dedicated timecode input, but the A7S III, I'm not able to jam timecode. But that gives me the ability to have 3 separate lav mics that are recording 32-bit float audio. There's a lot of different scenarios where this gives so much more flexibility than just using simple timecode generator boxes. This firmware update to the Track E really makes me excited for what Tentacle has planned for the future of these 2 products. Possibly this is the last that we'll see of the Tentacle Sync E, or maybe the Sync E version 2 will be half the cost of what the Track E2 will be in the future. But it's really exciting to see that Tentacle is continuing to give such huge firmware updates to the Track E. So, let me know if I missed something. Are there other reasons why you would use the Sync E for timecode instead of the Track E?